Hey, everybody, it's Alzay Calhoun with Covenant Consultant, and we're here with this week's Facebook Live. If you're not in the Facebook group, it's called Marketing Leaders Lab, and there should be a link somewhere around you to that will give you access to the Facebook group. So if you, what do we talk about in that group? We're focused on designing a better agency. Right now, you run an agency. You sell services, probably marketing services, and you want to build a better agency that has better value to you and better value to your clients. And what you're realizing is that it involves more moving parts than just having a savvy marketing mind. It involves more moving parts than just wanting to help people. There's some things you got to figure out. And how do you figure those things out? So we talk about these things in the group. The group is free. It's on Facebook. And I'm inviting you now. So if you're seeing this broadcast somewhere else, there's a link, again, somewhere around you so that you can enter the Facebook group if you like. Disclaimer, I'm still having the allergy bug. Pollen is in the air, and it's affecting me. So I'm still coughing a little bit. I'm still sneezing a little bit. I still drinking a lot of water, so I may have to take a pause or two to have the allergy moment. We're live. Bear with me, all right? Hey, Nelson. Hey, Emily. Now, that's the group, right? We just had a conversation about the group. If you're looking for a solution, if you're looking for a plan of attack, if you're looking for a series of steps to follow so that you can build the agency you want, so that you can install the next level of momentum, then I've got a group coaching program you might want to consider being in. That's what we do. We design the agency one step at a time. There are three specific systems that need to exist inside your agency. Client acquisition, step by step, how you bring in new clients. Client service, exactly how do you serve your clients? What service do you deploy? And client retention, how do you keep clients for the long haul? Client acquisition, client service, and client retention. And those are things that we specifically execute on inside the program. So if you want to do that work, if you're ready to do the work, get the new momentum, push it into the new place, that's what the program is for. I invite you into it. There's a link that may also be around here somewhere, up, down, left, right, that you can click. Book some time. We can talk and make sure that the program fits your agency's needs. And if so, great, we move forward inside the program. If not, no big deal. You go another route. So you're invited to either option, right? If you want to be in the group, there's that choice. If you're looking for a solution so you can build the systems and move forward more aggressively, you've got that choice. Wonderful. So what's today's conversation? So I'm gonna try to bundle a couple of things that have been discussed in the group, and I'm gonna frame it as a question. Question is, do you talk too much? Do you talk too much? So we're using that as the big idea. Now, there are a number of things underneath that, and there are a number of questions and comments and kind of back and forth that's happened in the group. And I'm going to try to do my best job to take those ideas and put them underneath this idea of, do you talk too much? Because frankly, I think you're talking way too much. I think you and your business are talking way too much. So Emily, cue the first question, please. So what opportunities? How do you know if you're talking too much? All right, let me give you a short list. So in the agency business, and it's a service business, it's often a conversation-based business. It's often a relationship business or a relationship business. And in that situation, you've got sales calls, you've got presentations, in-person presentations, and digital presentations. You've got networking meetings, coffee chats over coffee, email exchanges, random phone calls when the phone rings and there you are in a conversation. All of those are opportunities for interaction. All of those are opportunities for conversation. And most people don't fully appreciate how to get the most value out of those interactions. So we're gonna step through that. Next question, Emily. So then how do you know, or no, not how do you know? How do I know this, right? Like, how am I aware of the fact that you talk too much? Because you used to talk too much. And frankly, I still make the mistake now. But I used to have 90-minute sales calls. I used to be on the phone for free consultations or whatever you want, a discovery call, whatever you want to call it. I used to be on the phone for 90 minutes at a time. Now think about that for a second. Every time the phone rang, every time I booked a conversation, every time I talked to somebody, that was 90 minutes that I was going to spend. And the rhythm went like this. I was excited to begin the call, right? I was excited, you know, I'm talking to someone new. I might even make a sale. I'm excited to begin the call. The mistake I would make is once I understood, we're having a conversation, and once I heard one issue that I thought I could solve for, I would break from the flow of that conversation and immediately start teaching. I began to teach, and I use the word teach on purpose. I would teach, I would explain not just what to do, but why to do it. And I've launched. I mean, I have broken from the rhythm of conversation, and now I'm just, oh, you've got that problem. Oh, well, here's how that works. You do this, and then this, and here's why you got to do it that way, because this has to happen, that has to happen, that has to happen, that has to happen, and and then once you get those things done, then these things have to occur, and this relates to this, relates to that, and here I am just flying away with content. I am teaching the person that I'm talking to. What rule have I broken? The person that I am talking to isn't talking to me because they want to learn something. They're talking because they want to solve something. And it ended up becoming my fault. That's why I was on the call for 90 minutes. Now, I'd hang up the phone and I'd complain about, well, you know, so-and-so didn't want to buy anything. So-and-so wasn't ready. So-and-so didn't have. But I didn't appreciate that what I was doing in the call was breaking the value of that call for both parties. My next iteration, right? My next iteration. So I learned that the teaching thing wasn't, that was a mistake. So then, same flow of conversation. Once I heard one issue, just one, that I thought I could help with, then I started consulting. Like, meaning I would explain what to do and how to do it. So now I'm like, okay, that's your issue? Great. Well, here's what you do. Now, here's how you do that. You got to have this service and that service and this service and that service. You plug this into this, you plug that into that, and this is how all that works, right? Okay, you got that? Great. Now you add this piece, and then here's how you do that. You take this, put it here, take this, and I am mechanically explaining not why, not the why, but the how, the mechanical how of each and everything is what I'm doing on the phone with someone. Again, sanity check. The person on the phone that I'm talking to wasn't interested in how to do all that stuff. They were trying to solve a problem. I broke the conversation. I broke the value. So I launched into all that content. I'd hang up the phone, and then I would be frustrated because the person on the other end, quote unquote, didn't want to buy, quote unquote, was unqualified. And then I would be exhausted because I over-invested in the conversation. I took the conversation as an opportunity to show how smart I was. And there I was flying away with all these words and concepts. And maybe all that stuff was helpful, but it didn't help clarify the next step for the person I was talking to. I was talking too much. Yeah, Jason said he's done that. Yeah, right. I think it's something we've all done it at some point. We've all done it at least once. Right now, I'm talking about doing it repeatedly. Right. I mean, just when that becomes how you handle conversations, you just fly off the handle. Right. Okay. So that's how I ended up being on the phone for 90 minutes. Think about that for a second. 90 minutes on the phone, all that interaction, only to have someone go, nah, no thanks. There's got to be a better way of doing that. So next thought, Emily, next question there. So how do you think about that differently? How do you think about the conversation differently so you can get more value from the conversation? Really, I'm talking about preparation. So you got to prepare differently for the conversations. You got to prepare better. So let's step through some of the things I'm talking about when I say prepare better for the conversation. Number one, you cannot wing it. So what happens in all these conversations, remember, not just sales calls, but the coffee chats, the networking conversations, these presentations, whatever the format is, all these interactions, you don't prepare. You just show up. And you just show up and you say, well, I'll deal with it when I get there. We'll worry about it when we get there. Let's see what they say, and then I'll say what I have to say. That thing. You're just winging it. You're just freestyling. So the conversation doesn't have any structure because you haven't given it any structure. There you go. Now we're doing 100 things that are way outside the bounds. You didn't set the structure. So the first thing is, you cannot wing it. I don't care how good you think you are at sales. I don't care sales. I don't care how good you think you are. I don't care how afraid you might be of giving it structure because you don't want to be seen as a knucklehead, whatever. Let's continue. So you wing it, right? The other extreme of that is that you become so structured. You bought a sales template from somewhere. You downloaded a sales template from somewhere, and you're so structured in how you have to have the conversation that you never actually have a conversation. You're really just reading a sales script and talking to the wall, except the wall is a human being. So you end up talking way too long because you want to cover what you want to cover in the conversation. And you never actually get the arrangement, or get the conversation going. For example, have you ever been sitting at a presentation and you're listening to the presenter drone on slide after slide after slide after slide? Because they prepared content, structured content, and they've got to get through their content. Right? And so there you are kind of getting smacked in the face with content, but that doesn't mean that it's actually helping you. It doesn't mean that it's actually enticing you or attracting you into a conversation over structure. Again, most importantly here with this whole idea of not winging it, right, and having the appropriate structure, the person you're talking to is taking their cues from you. They don't know how to talk about this issue, right? They don't know how to talk about how to buy services. So they need you to give them some bounds. They need you to give them some picture. They need you to give them something to help them appreciate how to have this kind of conversation. But if it's only one way, they don't know how to dialogue, right? Because you've given them no space to dialogue. If it's only them talking to you on and on and on, you've given them no structure. They don't know where to stop and start their thoughts. You can't wing it. You got to have some structure. All right. Really what you should do, and if you got a sales script, fine. If you don't have a sales script, fine. But here's what you should do before you talk to anyone in any format, live, digital, networking, formal presentation, coffee chat, whatever. Take 5, 10, or 15 minutes before you interact. 5 good minutes, 10 good minutes, 15 good minutes. Take a deep breath and do just a little bit of research. Take a deep breath, slow yourself down, prepare yourself to engage with somebody else. Secondly, do just a little bit of research. So see their website, see their social media presence, see how they're messaging their business, see how they have set up set up their different content channels, etc. Just a little bit of research, and let that begin how you start the conversation. You, with the deep breath, you've relaxed. 2, you got a little bit of context on what it is you're going to talk about. Can you prepare in a more advanced way? Absolutely. But that's a simple, practical way of beginning a conversation, so you don't find yourself all over the map, and then don't find the person you're talking to all over the map. So then, taking that one step deeper. Even if you're prepared, how do you get the other person prepared? So you've taken your 5 minutes, right? You've taken your deep breath. You've done your prep. But how do you get the other person to prepare so that they know how this is supposed to go? All right. So in other words, how do you get the other person to be a better dance partner, if you will, in the conversation, right? First thing you got to do is send some content before you guys talk. Some content. It can be an article, a blog post, a video, a case study, a testimonial, a simple email saying, listen, here are the expectations that I have for our current conversation. And then ask the question, what are your expectations? But my goodness, send something to help the person prepare themselves for the conversation. So do that. As a part of that, related to that, do not send them content just because you have content. So again, the idea of the content is to help set up the conversation. Just because you happen to have some 45-minute video deep on your hard drive, don't pull that out and send that to people. It's because you have some 60-minute webinar that you created 6 months ago. Don't just pull that out and say, hey, watch this webinar. Just because you made some cute infographic or whatever. So just because you have stuff to send, don't overwhelm your client with unnecessary content. Show them something that helps them specifically prepare for the conversation you're about to have. What you want to do when you begin the conversation is acknowledge that we are about to do something together. Hey, John, good to talk to you. I've sent you some content. We know you got something going on already. Let's start there. Did you like the content that I sent you? Boom. We've now begun. We've now started somewhere concrete, and we're now beginning an actual conversation. This may sound overly simplistic. Most folks don't do it. I am not only have I sold digital marketing services, I'm a consumer of digital marketing services. I hire people to do work for me in my company. And I am just shocked at how people don't prepare me to interact with them. How I have to discover things once I finally get on the phone with folks. I don't want to do that. As a consumer, I don't want to do that. Your client doesn't want to do that either. So though this may sound very, very simple, most people don't do it. Therefore, they end up having poor conversations. Then they end up having to over-communicate during the conversation. And then they find themselves frustrated when the conversation doesn't go the way they thought it should go. It's your agency. These are your conversations. Folks are coming to you asking for help. You got to help structure what that looks like. Let's continue. So, Emily, we're moving into the next conversation here. So another breakdown in these conversations. Again, in any format, and you hear me sniffling, right? It's the allergies. So you hear the breakdown, right? In any format, coffee, formal sales call, etc. You've been taught that you should always be closing. Classic sales training, right? Ask for the sale, close. And what does that training do? That training creates essentially two types of people. That training creates people on one end that are always closing, always hard selling, always do you want to buy, do you want to buy, do you want to buy? And it creates another category of people who are the exact opposite. They don't want to be seen as the used car salesman. So then they never close. They never ask the question. They never really confront the issue of, do you want help with this? So how do you think about that, right? The conversation that you're having is not about, for clarity, the conversation that you're having is not about waiting for them to say they want to buy your services. That's not the conversation. So you are not playing nice until they say, you know what? We want to work with you. When can we get started? That's not what you're waiting on. You also it's unnecessary to force that. You know, hey, you guys need some help. Don't you want to buy? Don't you want to get started right now? Neither one of those is your job. Either one of those can make it an uncomfortable conversation. What's a better approach there? Focus on the need that they brought to you. Focus on the need that they are bringing to you. Fully and completely understand that need. And in doing so, it becomes much more obvious what the next appropriate step should be. But if you don't make space for that conversation, if you don't make space for that dialogue, if you are so focused on what you're trying to get done in the conversation, then the prospective client, the person you're talking to, never gets an opportunity to think for themselves and say, that's really what we need. That's really how that's fixed. Man, can you help us with that? What happens is that they quote unquote close themselves. But if you are always asking for the business, always closing the sale, you sound over aggressive. And if you don't simply ask the question, if you don't simply ask, do you want help with that? If you don't ask that question, then they never get confronted with the question. But you can't do either, always closing or not closing at all. Either one of them is broken if you don't know what you're solving for, if you don't know what you're fixing. So you got to create a much better conversation. Listen, there's a way to do this. And it doesn't have to be complex, but it is very intentional. There's a way of interacting with people where your services become the obvious solution for what it is that they're resolving. And we work on that inside the program. That's what we do in the program. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic secret, but there is a process. And there's some things that you have to do on your end to make that possible. You got to plan those things out. You got to be deliberate about those things. And it can't be done in a one-page PDF download. You're going to have to step back in your business, think about it deliberately, and create something that makes sense. Create a dialogue, a way of having conversations that makes sense. We help you get that done in the program. That's what it's for. So if you're struggling with these conversations, if you're struggling with these interactions, downloading sales templates won't get you there. There's the end of the story. Spoiler alert. Downloading one-page PDFs will not get you there. You're going to have to develop something more tailored, structured, and appropriate for your business, and I'd like to help you with that inside the program. Okay. One more thing here, right? So in all of these interactions, right, what goes undiscussed? What goes under discussed? What goes, what's not being acknowledged like it should? And I've got some notes on this because you may have heard everything I've talked about before. Maybe you heard it in another video of mine. Maybe you've already been trained on that. Maybe you are like, I get that already. Maybe Alzay, I'm already doing that. You might be like, you know what? I get it already, man. I got it. I got it. All right, cool. How about this? If you know all that stuff and you're still having wrong conversations, if you know all that stuff and you're still having 90-minute conversations like I used to, if you know all that stuff and you're still not resonating when you talk to people, what's happening? I got one word. Fear. Fear. Fear? Alzay, what are you talking about? Okay. First fear. In these interactions, you are afraid of offending the person you're talking to. You're afraid that if you tell them how the conversation is supposed to go, you're afraid that if you confront them with an issue, you're afraid that if you give them the bottom line, hey, we can fix this or not. You are afraid that if you do that, they will judge you. They will think poorly of you. They will not appreciate that perspective. And you're afraid of them not liking you when you walk away. So all the good stuff that I just said, how to have a structure and have the right kind of dialogue and et cetera, fear. You're afraid that if you come to the conversation like a real agency, like a full-fledged business owner, if you come like a full expert, you'll offend them. And so you do all these other things so that you feel less offensive. Well, how is your approach working for you? Let's continue. Fear, number 2, fear of not closing the sale. So listen, we all run businesses here. In running a business requires you to serve clients. And to serve clients, you got to close clients. Someone's got to say yes and pay money for your services. And so what happens to all of us is that we default back to, gosh, he should buy. Gosh, she should buy. They need to buy. Well, why won't they buy? They need to buy. So while that's in your mind, you're afraid of doing something off that will cause you to lose the sale. And so because you're afraid to lose the sale, you tiptoe around issues that should be directly addressed. While you're tiptoeing, I have to ask, how was that approach working for you? Let's continue. Third, fear of closing the sale. So wait, we're having a really good conversation. We're getting along really well, and I think we can actually help these people solve their problem. But if we close this sale, if they say yes, oh, think of all the work we have to do. We've got to set this up, set that up, organize this, and do that. I got to hire another vendor. I got to get my team organized. Working with every client, working with a new client, with this particular client, creates more work for us. Fear of closing the sale. Think about that for a second. Fear of closing the sale. Well, now I have to ask. So as you've been tiptoeing around conversations because quietly you're afraid of that client saying yes, how was that approach working for you? Let's continue. By the way, if you disagree with anything I just said, post something below. If you disagree, have a different point of view or have a question about it, please post a question, post a comment. I take all comers. Okay. I want to remind you that there are 2 really important ideas to close all this down. I want to remind you that the conversation that you have with other people is not about you. It's not about you. The conversation that you have with other people is about them and what they are trying to get done. Your fears, whether you talk about them or not, whether you're aware of them or not, your fears are stopping this momentum you want to experience in your business. Your own concerns, your own fears. So quietly, hiddenly, indirectly, these conversations have now become about you. You got your fear in the center of that conversation. You've got your trepidation in the center of that conversation. So really what you're dialoguing about is not about the need that they have, but yet the fear that you have. You're afraid that they won't like you if you close. You're afraid that they won't close at all. You're afraid that if they do close, then all this other these things have to take place, and you aren't prepared for those. Whose fault is that? It's not the prospective client's fault. That's your fault. And if you become less concerned about that, then the person you're talking to now has space to say, you know what, we really need help. Can y'all really help us? And because you aren't afraid anymore, now you can say, yes, we can really help you. And it costs $25,000 or it costs $75,000 or whatever the appropriate number is. Final thing here. Your life in all these conversations become so much easier when you've got a productized service. So when you come talking about being prepared for a conversation, when you come to that conversation prepared with an existing productized service, you know what you do. It's already spelled out. The milestones are already there. When you know that already, then you can give your client or this prospective client the same confidence. You're talking through a situation, you understand the real problem, and say, you know what? We can fix that. I've got something already laid out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll fix that problem and take you where you want to go. What do you want to do? It becomes an immediate close. It becomes an immediate conclusion. The prospective client knows they can actually get the problem solved, and it has a very concrete time, scope, and price. That clarity is so attractive. So in order to have better conversations, one of the core inputs you need is a clearer service. And that's something you've got to do in-house. You've got to develop a clearer service. If you're offering 19 different things, you bring 19 different data points into that conversation. You need one clear solution. That's why we work on that specifically inside the program. The one thing you should be focused on. Where should you be focused? And then systemize that, productize that, be incredibly clear about that. So everybody knows what they're committed to. The client knows, a prospective client knows what they're about to commit to. You and your team know what you've committed to. So when everybody says yes, momentum immediately begins. If you want to have better conversations, you've got to have a clearer service. No one talks about this. They teach you more sales hacks, more sales trick. There are no sales tricks. You've got to have a solution for the person you're talking to. The clearer your solution, the easier it is for them to say yes to it. Now, I haven't gotten any rebuttals. So everyone's either agreeing with this approach, or they're scared to say that they disagree out loud. I don't know which one, but I'm good to go. All right. So before today's Facebook Live, there was one particular question that was brought up. I'm going to look for that now and address that question now. So bear with me here while I look for it. So actually, there are two here now that I'm here. So one is about pricing, packages versus custom pricing, and another is about the free consult flow. So let me take those one at a time. So Matt asked. He asked about pricing and whether it's packaged or whether it's custom prices, and because he's seen some conflicting advice, on YouTube and other places on how to structure services. Some people say that it's better to have a series of options, gold, silver, bronze, to make things more transparent. Okay, so bottom line, so he's asking kind of for an approach here. So in my business and what I help my clients do, I've got a very particular point of view about this. What I would say to you, Matt, is that you need one service. One. You don't even need 3 tiers. You need one service, one tier. Begin there. Begin with one service, one tier. Why? Because of the word that you used. It's more transparent. So one service, you can clearly organize it. You can clearly display it in front of a client. They know what the scope of work is, and they can say yes to it because they know what they're buying. Right? Okay. That's my point. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it 100 more times because I think it's the savior of your agency. It's the saving concept of your agency. Productizing saves your life, right? So Matt just gave me a thumbs up. He appreciates that. Thank you, sir. All right. So just to highlight the opposite. So the custom pricing thing, right? So if you know digital marketing well, that there are a lot of moving parts in digital marketing, and you say, you know what? I'm willing to work with clients on a custom basis because they have different needs and I've got different skills, and I can mix and match depending on what my client needs. Here's the major pain point that people feel when they choose to operate in the custom way. Here's the major initial pain point. You have to have a series of conversations before you can get clear on what the client actually wants. So you got to have conversation number 1 where they try to explain what they want. And then typically you've got to submit a proposal to document it, because your proposal is what actually gives it structure. So then you send a proposal in. They look at that and go, oh, that's not what I meant. Make some revisions. So then you make a revision to that proposal. You try it again and submit it. And that rhythm continues. Oh, that's not quite what I meant. We meant this. Can you add that? And so you end up in this back and forth proposal rhythm. And what ends up happening functionally inside your business is that becomes many man hours of free work. You're having to actually and actively consult your prospective client. You have to do real work. You got to do real work to get them clear, and then submit this document that they can approve. So custom work sounds really good, and you can get paid a premium for doing custom work. But when you look at the raw dollars that come in versus the raw effort that you had to expend to get that, it ends up not being working to your favor. It is better, I believe, if you design something specific and, again, deploy that solution as elegantly as you can. So there's that. Let me check in here. Right. So Nelson has a question. Nelson, I'm going to come right back to that question, sir. So David has a question. He says, I think I know how to pace and balance a 30-minute free consult. Can you help clarify? Right. Okay. Oh, wait, this is longer than I thought it was. Okay. So let me scan very quickly. Nitty-gritty how to. Okay, right. So David, what I'm reading here, so long story short of what David has posted is he's got some experience having free consultations. He's had some success having free consultations, but there's a breakdown somewhere in his implementation of the consult. Like somewhere in it, it's not ending the way I want. It's not landing the way I want. I still find myself over communicating sometimes, and I'm trying to give the short summary here. So David, if you're asking a very specific question, I can only address that if with a very specific response. That's what the program is for, so we can really hack these things and get down to the actual nitty gritty and figure it all out. The base response I have for you, given what you've submitted here, 30 minutes is a good time block. So having 30 minutes as a starting place for having a conversation, you should be able to get to real clarity in 30 minutes. Bang. That should be able to happen. So that's the right kind of framing. Maybe a little longer, but in 30 minutes you should be able to get there. Now, there's something here, David, about working with people. Number one, are you talking to a qualified person? So this is for everyone, not just David, for everybody. So you're on the phone talking with somebody, but we all, especially if you sell marketing services, some people come to you with no assets, no existing business, no existing customer base, no prospect base, no website, no social media presence. I mean, they got nothing. And they're coming to you and they're saying, save me, marketing person, save me, agency, and develop my stuff. Okay. So that pocket of people need a different kind of service versus an established business with an established customer base, no matter how big or how small, with an established web presence, an established social media presence, and you're getting momentum from what they've already created. Those are two different scenarios. And so where you should conclude, David, giving one of those two is different. Those are two different types of prospects. And so therefore you're going to end up having two different types of conversations. If you're trying to have the same conversation with those two different types of people, that's where you've got friction. That's why it doesn't feel good to you, because you should be talking to one or the other. If you work with startups, there's nothing wrong with that. And you can sell services to those folks, but that's one kind of conversation. If you sell to established businesses, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a different kind of conversation. So you might need to take a step back, David, and make sure that you're talking to the kind of people you actually want to talk to. Pause. All right. So hopefully that's good enough for now. So those were the two questions that came in. There were a few more things here to follow up. So Nelson's asked, how much should you talk about your service with a prospective client? Let's start here. 0. How about that for a response? How much should you talk about your service with the prospective client? 0. Your client, prospective client for sure, does not care about your service. Do not care. No interest. Uninterested. Uninvested. Your prospective client, this is not just for Nelson, this is for everybody. Your prospective client is 100% invested in their situation. There is something going on in their situation that they want to be removed. There is a pain, issue, problem, concern, frustration point happening in their world right now that they want not to exist anymore. They're talking to you, Nelson, and they're talking to anybody else who's listening to this content. They're talking to you because they want that issue gone. And until you're able to pinpoint what that issue is, your service has no value, none whatsoever. Even if you're, let's say, if you're on a sales call, or a discovery call, whatever you name it, whatever you call it, even if you're on the phone talking to a prospective client and they ask you about your services, feel free to tell them the truth. Sir, I know you're not really interested in our services. We do a lot of great things, but you want to do something in your world. Let's talk about what you're trying to do, and let's see if we can help you get that thing done. That's what the conversation should be. And so, Nelson, you've got to get better about turning the conversation back towards them. Everybody, for everyone, right? Full stop here, full time out. What I just described is a skill, not a concept. So you can hear that and you go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we should be doing that. And it sounds really good when I say it. You know, you hear it and you go, boy, that's the way to do that. But actually doing that, actually entering into a conversation that's focused on them and not on you is a lot harder than it looks. And what Nelson's question just displayed, what it just brought forward, is one of those thoughts that get in the way. Is he was thinking about his own services. He came into the room thinking about how much should I talk about my services. That's the way he's thinking right now. And I'm trying to, you know, he's kind of the guinea pig at the moment, but he's showing everybody else where the breakdown in that thinking is. You walk into the room, well, how much should I talk about my services? Assume that you won't. Assume that you won't. And shape that entire situation around what the other person is trying to get done. That is a skill. That is a prepared, practiced skill. You can't wing that. You can't freestyle that. There's no script that'll just kind of magically get you. You've got to prepare to have that kind of conversation. And everything I was talking about today earlier and how you prepare must all be aligned to create those kinds of conversations. It gets real Jedi from here. It's not a one-page PDF download. You got to think through this. You got to be more intentional about it. And that's why we do this inside the program. We give it intentionality. We stop. We think about it specifically. We make sure that you're organized to deliver the best conversation possible. What ends up happening, by the way, when you do all that, what ends up happening is people say, that was the most enlightening conversation I've had in the last day, week, month, year. People tell me that all the time. They go, I never thought about it that way. This is the best conversation I've had in forever. I can't afford the services right now. Now isn't the best time for me to get started, Alzay. But I understand, I get that, and I appreciate that. And what ends up happening is you create people who respect your business for the long term. They become advocates of your services, even though they haven't bought anything from you, because you're having a much different conversation. I over-answered that question. But it gets heavy from here. And the difference is how you structure those conversations, how you set that up. And it's more than just a one-page PDF download. So then Jack asked, typically, how many conversations should it take to close a prospect? So what I help my clients design inside the program, what we work on and focus on is a one-call close. Is getting someone to say yes, no matter the dollar amount, getting someone to say yes in the very first conversation you have. And if for some reason that is inappropriate, and there are reasons why you would not be able to get a yes on the very first call. But if there are reasons why you can't get a yes on that call, then you can move to a second call where you can get a yes. And so we're trying to get a conversation with two, or get a decision in two conversations. Let me make sure we all understand that. I'm talking about getting a decision, a yes or a no, because it may not always be yes. For a number of great reasons, it may not be time for someone to say yes to your services right now. That's possible. But in either situation, you've got to ask the person you're talking to decide, to be a business owner and make a decision about what they want to do. And they should be able to make a decision without 6 months of lead up time, without 4, 5, or 9 different conversations. But you as the expert on the phone, you as the expert in the room, have to help them make that decision. And that's a skill. That's a skill. And you got to set it up the right way. And that's what we do in